The police station was quiet that morning, but in one corner of the building, inside the small kennel where retired dogs were kept, lay Rex. Rex was not just any dog. He had once been the pride of the police department, a strong German shepherd trained as a canine officer. His ears were sharp, his nose could pick up the faintest scents, and his courage had saved lives more than once. For years, he had served beside officers during patrols, drug busts, and rescue missions. Every officer knew him by name, and his bravery had earned him medals and respect. But time has a way of changing even the strongest heroes. Rex was no longer the young, powerful dog he used to be. His fur had turned gray around the edges, and his steps had become slower with each passing day. A long illness had left him weak and in constant pain. His once bright eyes now carried a shadow of sadness, and though he still tried to wag his tail when familiar faces walked by, his strength was failing. The police officers, many of whom had worked with Rex for years, often visited his kennel. They spoke softly to him, remembering the times when he had charged into dangerous situations without hesitation. Some of them bent down to pet his head gently, their hearts heavy with guilt. They all knew what was going to happen soon. Rex had been scheduled for euthanasia. It wasn't because they didn't love him. In truth, every officer wished they could save him, but the treatment he needed was expensive and the department had limited funds. They had new dogs to train, new cases to fight, and the medical bills for Rex had grown higher than anyone could afford. The shelter workers who partnered with the police said it was better to let Rex go peacefully rather than let him suffer. The decision was made, and the date was set. In just a few days, Rex would no longer be around. He would no longer bark with authority, no longer patrol the streets, no longer be part of the team. The officers tried not to think about it, but the thought of losing him weighed on their hearts like a heavy stone. Rex, lying quietly on his blanket, didn't understand the decision. Dogs never do. He only knew that fewer people came to see him, and his time outside the kennel had become shorter. His world was now a small space with metal bars, the sound of distant footsteps, and the faint smell of disinfectant from the shelter staff cleaning nearby. Sometimes, when an officer walked by, Rex lifted his head, his ears twitching as if waiting for a command. He longed for the days when his handler would call his name with confidence, when sirens blared and he had a mission to complete. Now there were no missions, only silence and waiting. There were stories whispered among the officers about Rex's past. They remembered the night he had found a missing child lost in the woods. The little boy had been gone for hours and darkness was falling. Rex had followed the faint trail through mud, bushes, and thorns until his bark echoed across the trees. The officers had rushed toward the sound, finding the boy safe thanks to Rex. Another time, Rex had chased down a criminal who tried to escape on foot. No one could outrun him back then. The man had been caught, and the officers laughed later about how terrified he looked when Rex tackled him. These memories made it even harder for everyone to accept what was about to happen. How could they let go of a hero? How could they let him fade away in silence with no honor, no ceremony, just a quiet end in a cold room? One officer, Officer Daniels, stood longer than the rest by Rex's kennel. He had been Rex's first handler, the one who trained him when he was still a pup. Daniels remembered the stubbornness Rex had shown during training, how he refused to give up even when he didn't understand the commands at first. That stubbornness had turned into determination, and that determination had turned into bravery. Daniels whispered, "I'm sorry, boy," before walking away, his voice breaking with emotion. The shelter staff prepared the paperwork quietly. For them, this was routine. Many old dogs came and went, and though they cared for them, they had learned to guard their hearts. Still, when they saw Rex's name on the list, even they felt a pang of sadness. Rex was different. He wasn't just any dog. He had a history, a record of service, a legacy. But paperwork had no room for legacy. It only spoke of costs, health, and practicality. Meanwhile, the town carried on as usual. People walked past the shelter. Children played in parks, and cars rushed by without knowing that inside those walls, a chapter in their community's history was about to close. Few people outside the police force even knew who Rex was. Heroes are often forgotten quickly when the world moves on. But destiny has a way of stepping in when least expected. The day before Rex's scheduled euthanasia, the shelter opened its doors to visitors. It was a regular adoption day, where families came to look at the animals in hopes of finding a new pet. The building was filled with the sounds of barking dogs, meowing cats, and the chatter of people moving from cage to cage. Rex lay silently in his corner, too tired to bark. His body was weak, but his spirit had not completely faded. When people walked past, he raised his eyes just a little, as though asking for one last chance. Most visitors didn't stop. They were drawn to younger dogs, playful puppies with wagging tails and bright eyes. Who would want an old, sick dog? It seemed like the world had already made its decision for him. But as the day went on, fate carried someone through those shelter doors who would see him differently, someone whose heart would not be swayed by age or illness, someone who would change the course of Rex's story forever. And as the sun began to set outside, casting long shadows across the floor of the shelter, Rex's tired eyes caught sight of a figure walking slowly toward his kennel. A girl. She was young, no more than a teenager, but there was something in her gaze, something gentle yet firm, curious yet compassionate. She didn't pass by like the others. She stopped. She looked directly into Rex's eyes, and for the first time in a long while, Rex lifted his head fully, his ears twitching with faint hope. It was as if he sensed that his story was not over yet. The next morning, the shelter opened its doors to the public again. Families walked in with excitement, parents holding the hands of their children, couples looking for a pet to bring home, and elderly people searching for quiet companionship. The sound of barking echoed through the hallways as younger dogs jumped, wagged their tails, and tried to get the attention of the visitors. Puppies pawed at the metal bars, eager to play with anyone who would stop for even a moment. In the middle of this lively scene, Rex remained silent. His tired body rested on the thin blanket in his kennel. His head lay between his paws and his breathing was slow. Unlike the other dogs, he did not bark or jump. He did not rush toward the bars to greet strangers. He only watched quietly with those deep, soulful eyes that told the story of a warrior who had once been strong, but was now forgotten. Most people who passed by his cage barely gave him a second glance. Some whispered to each other, "He looks too old," or "That dog doesn't look well." They quickly moved on to the younger dogs, the ones who seemed more cheerful, more full of energy, and less of a burden. Among the visitors that day was a teenage girl named Emily. She had come to the shelter with her mother. Emily was in high school, and while many of her classmates spent their weekends at malls or playing games, Emily preferred spending her time with animals. She had grown up with a gentle nature, always drawn to creatures that needed help. Her dream was to become a veterinarian one day. She had read books about animals, watched countless videos about their care, and even volunteered at small clinics when she could. Her mother often told her that she had a special heart, one that could feel the pain of others, even those who couldn't speak. That was true, because Emily's eyes always seemed to notice the ones who were overlooked. The stray cat hiding under a car, the injured bird lying in the grass, and now, the silent dog sitting in the back corner of the shelter. As soon as Emily walked into the shelter, her attention wasn't caught by the noisy puppies. Instead, she looked toward the quiet cages, where dogs that nobody paid attention to were kept. That was when her gaze fell on Rex. She stopped in her tracks. Something inside her stirred as she looked at him. His body was thin, his fur looked rough, and his eyes seemed heavy with years of pain. Yet behind those eyes she saw something else. She saw dignity, courage, and a spark that had not completely died out. Emily walked slowly toward his kennel. Other visitors brushed past her, heading for the playful puppies, but Emily kept her focus on Rex. She stopped right in front of his cage and bent down so her face was level with his. "Hi, boy," she whispered softly. At first, Rex did not move. He had learned over time that most people did not stop for long, and he expected her to walk away like the others. But then something happened. Emily didn't walk away. She stayed. Her soft voice reached him, and Rex slowly lifted his head. His ears twitched and his tired eyes locked onto hers. For a moment, the world around them grew quiet. The sounds of barking faded in Emily's mind, and all she could see was this dog who looked like he was waiting for someone, maybe for her. Rex moved closer to the bars, his nose pressing gently against them. Emily reached her fingers through the gap and let him sniff her hand. When his nose touched her skin, she felt a warmth that went straight to her heart. "Good boy," she said softly, stroking his muzzle through the bars. The shelter worker standing nearby noticed Emily and came over. That one's name is Rex, she explained. He used to be a police dog. Served for years. Saved lives too, but now, he's old, sick. He's scheduled to be put down tomorrow. Emily's eyes widened in shock. What, put down? Why? The worker sighed. He's been ill for a long time. Treatments are expensive and the department can't keep paying for him. Nobody wants to adopt an old sick dog. It's kinder, they say, to let him go peacefully. Emily turned her eyes back to Rex. He was still standing near the bars, his tail moving slowly, as if he was trying to show her that he was still alive, still wanting love. Her heart ached. Her mother came over, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Emily, come on. Let's look at the others. Maybe a puppy? But Emily shook her head. Her voice trembled as she spoke. No, Mom, look at him. He's not ready to give up. I can see it in his eyes. Her mother frowned, unsure. Sweetheart, he's sick. Taking care of him will be hard. Don't you think it's too much for us? Emily didn't answer right away. She kept her gaze fixed on Rex. She imagined what his life must have been like, running through the night to find a missing child, standing by officers in dangerous situations, being brave when others couldn't. This was not just any dog. This was a hero, and heroes didn't deserve to die forgotten in a cage. Finally, she spoke with determination in her voice. I don't want to walk away. I want him. The worker looked at her in surprise. You want Rex? Are you sure? He's not a normal adoption. He'll need a lot of care and there are no promises. He might not live long. I don't care, Emily said firmly. If he only has a short time left, I want him to feel loved. I don't want him to die alone. Her mother hesitated. She saw the seriousness in her daughter's eyes. Emily was not making a childish wish. She was making a decision with her heart. The girl she had raised was no ordinary teenager. She had compassion far beyond her years. Rex, as if sensing what was happening, let out a soft whine and pressed harder against the bars, his nose brushing Emily's hand again. Emily smiled through the tears forming in her eyes. She whispered, It's okay, boy. I'm here. The worker studied the scene quietly. It was rare to see someone stop for Rex. Rarer still to see someone fight for him. She finally sighed and nodded. I'll talk to the supervisor. If you're serious, we can start the paperwork. Emily's heart leapt. She looked at her mother with pleading eyes. Please, Mom, let's bring him home. I'll take care of him. I'll do everything I can. Her mother's expression softened. She saw how much this meant to her daughter. Slowly she nodded. All right, we'll try. But Emily, this will be a big responsibility. I know, Emily whispered, stroking Rex's face again. But he's worth it. And so on that ordinary day, something extraordinary began. While most visitors left with playful puppies, Emily stayed behind, ready to fight for the one dog everyone else had already given up on. She didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but she knew one thing for sure. She was not going to let Rex be forgotten. For Rex, who had been waiting in silence, the moment felt like a spark of hope. His story was not over yet. The adoption office inside the shelter was quiet, compared to the barking and noise of the main kennels. A single desk sat in the corner, papers stacked high, and a tired-looking woman in glasses handled the endless forms. Emily and her mother followed the shelter worker inside, Rex's file in hand. The worker placed it on the desk and said softly, This girl wants to adopt Rex. The woman behind the desk raised her eyebrows in surprise. She looked at Emily carefully. Rex, the police dog? Yes, Emily said firmly. I want him, the woman sighed. You understand, young lady, Rex isn't like other dogs. He's very sick. His medicine is expensive. He needs special food and a lot of care. Most people can't handle that. Emily didn't flinch. I can handle it. I'll do whatever it takes. Her mother stepped in, still hesitant. We need to be honest here. Emily is young, and I'm worried this is more than she can manage. But Emily didn't back down. She turned to her mother with determination shining in her eyes. Mom, please. He's not just a dog. He's a hero. He spent his life saving people, and now everyone wants to throw him away. I can't let that happen. Even if he doesn't have much time left, I want him to feel loved. I don't care how hard it is. Her mother stared at her for a moment, realizing this wasn't just a teenager's emotional reaction. This was her daughter's heart speaking. Slowly she nodded. All right, Emily. If this is truly what you want, I'll stand by you. Emily's eyes filled with tears of gratitude, and she hugged her mother tightly. "Thank you, Mom, you won't regret it." The paperwork began. The woman at the desk slid forms across, and Emily eagerly signed where she could, though some parts required her mother's signature. As the pen scratched across the pages, Emily felt her dream taking shape. Each signature brought Rex one step closer to freedom, one step closer to a home. When the paperwork was finally complete, the worker handed Emily a small bag of Rex's belongings, an old collar, a worn leash, and a few records of his medical history. It wasn't much, but it meant the world to her. Moments later, they led Rex out of his kennel. For the first time in weeks, he stepped outside the shelter doors. The sun touched his fur, and the breeze carried fresh scents he had almost forgotten. His steps were shaky, his body frail, but his tail wagged faintly as Emily knelt beside him. She fastened the collar around his neck and whispered, "Come on, boy. You're going home." The sight touched even the shelter staff. They had seen many adoptions, but this one felt different. It wasn't a family choosing a puppy for fun. It was a girl choosing to save a forgotten hero. The car ride home was quiet. Rex lay across the back seat, his head resting on Emily's lap. She stroked his fur gently, whispering to him the whole way, "You're safe now, Rex. No one's going to hurt you. You don't have to be alone anymore." Her mother glanced in the rearview mirror, watching her daughter's face glow with happiness. For the first time, she realized Emily's decision wasn't just about saving Rex. It was also about growing up, learning responsibility, and showing courage. When they reached home, Emily had already prepared a small corner of her room for Rex. A soft blanket was laid out along with a bowl of water and food. She helped him settle down, his tired body sinking into comfort he hadn't felt in years. Rex let out a long sigh, almost like relief, before closing his eyes. Emily sat beside him, resting her hand on his side. "This is your home now," she whispered. "You don't have to be afraid." That night, as the house grew quiet, Emily stayed awake longer than usual, watching over Rex. She thought about the stories the shelter worker had told her, about Rex's years of service, the lives he had saved, the battles he had fought. Tears filled her eyes as she imagined what it must have felt like for him to go from being celebrated to being forgotten. She promised herself right then and there, "I won't let you feel forgotten ever again." The next day, word spread quickly through the small town. Some neighbors were surprised when they saw Emily walking down the street with Rex. "Isn't that the police dog?" someone asked. "I thought he was going to be put down." Emily only smiled and kept walking. She didn't care what people thought. All that mattered was that Rex was alive, and he was hers now. At home, Emily began researching everything she could about caring for old and sick dogs. She borrowed books from the library, watched videos online, and even called local veterinarians for advice. She wrote notes in a small notebook, determined to learn everything she needed to help Rex live as comfortably as possible. Her mother noticed the change in her. Emily, who once spent her evenings on the phone with friends or doing homework lazily, was now focused, dedicated, and serious. She woke up early to prepare Rex's meals, gave him his medicine on time, and took him for short walks even when she was tired. Every day, Rex grew a little stronger. His tail wagged more often, his eyes shone brighter, and sometimes he even barked softly as if thanking her. Emily felt joy in every small improvement. To her, every wag of his tail was proof that she had made the right choice. One afternoon, as she sat on the porch with Rex lying beside her, Emily's best friend came over. "Why didn't you adopt a puppy?" her friend asked curiously. "Wouldn't that be easier?" Emily smiled and shook her head. "Anybody can adopt a puppy, but not everyone can love a dog that's sick and old. Rex needed me and I needed him. He's special." Her friend looked at Rex, who raised his head weakly and licked Emily's hand. "I guess you're right," her friend said softly. "He does look happy. Happy, that was the word." Rex may not have been young or healthy anymore, but for the first time in a long time, he was happy. And that happiness was all Emily wanted for him. That night, as Rex lay beside her bed, Emily whispered, "You're not alone, boy. You'll never be alone again." Rex closed his eyes, his breathing steady, his body finally at peace. For the first time since his retirement, he felt safe. He had found someone who believed in him when no one else did. And deep inside, even though he couldn't speak, he knew this girl had saved him. Not just with medicine, but with love. The days after Rex arrived at Emily's home were filled with a quiet rhythm. Each morning, Emily woke before sunrise, eager to check on him. She would softly whisper his name, feeling his warm, tired body beside her, and gently brush his fur. His coat was rough in some places, and patches of gray were more visible than ever, but she didn't mind. To her, every mark, every scar, every sign of age told a story of courage and loyalty. Emily had created a special schedule for him. His medications were given at the same time each day, carefully measured and accompanied by her soft words of encouragement. She learned which foods he could digest easily, how to massage his stiff joints, and how to encourage him to move without causing pain. She even researched gentle exercises for dogs with weak muscles, walking him slowly around the yard, letting him sniff and explore without forcing him. At first, Rex struggled. His legs trembled, and sometimes he would lie down mid-step, refusing to move any further. But Emily never lost patience. She would kneel beside him, rubbing his sides and murmuring, "It's okay, boy. Take your time. I'm here with you." Slowly, over the first few weeks, he began to walk farther without lying down, and his tail wagged more often. Emily also realized that Rex needed more than medicine and food. He needed companionship, love, and trust. She spent long hours just sitting beside him, talking to him, reading aloud, or gently scratching behind his ears. Even the smallest gestures mattered. When Rex leaned into her hand, resting his head as if to say thank you, Emily felt a warmth in her chest she had never felt before. Her friends noticed the change too. Emily had always been kind, but now she seemed even more focused and determined. She no longer spent hours on her phone or playing games. Instead, she spent time studying veterinary guides, calling clinics for advice, and tracking Rex's health every day. Her mother sometimes worried she was taking too much responsibility, but she also admired the courage and care her daughter displayed. Word of Emily's dedication spread in their small town. Neighbors who had seen her walking with Rex commented on his transformation. One afternoon, Mrs. Thompson, who lived 2 streets away, stopped Emily on her walk. "I can't believe it," she said softly, stroking Rex's head. "He looks so much better than last time I saw him." Emily smiled, her eyes bright. "He's trying, Mrs. Thompson. He's trying really hard." Rex was not fully recovered. He would never be the strong young canine he once was, but he was alive, and more importantly, he was happy. His eyes regained some sparkle, his steps grew steadier, and sometimes, when Emily returned from school, he would greet her at the door with a soft bark, wagging his tail just enough to show excitement. Those small moments felt like victories. At home, Emily made sure Rex felt comfortable and secure. She built a small ramp by the steps so he wouldn't have to jump, laid out a warm bed in a quiet corner away from noise, and made sure water and food were always nearby. Nights were quiet but filled with soft whispers and gentle pats. "You're safe now," she would say each night, tucking him in like a child. Emily also discovered that Rex responded to routines and affection more than anything else. He loved to lie beside her while she did her homework, his head resting on her lap as she read or wrote. Sometimes she would softly hum songs she remembered from childhood, and Rex would close his eyes, listening, as if comforted by her voice. The bond between them grew stronger every day. Emily began to notice subtle changes. The way Rex's ears perked slightly when she called his name, the small tail wag when he saw her return from school, and even the little whines when he wanted attention. Each gesture was a reminder that trust had been rebuilt, that this dog, who had once faced death alone, now felt love and security. Emily also wanted Rex to feel proud again. She remembered the stories the shelter worker had told her about his heroic past. The child lost in the woods, the criminal captured, the countless missions he had completed. She made small routines where she could encourage him, like simple training exercises to reinforce his strength and intelligence. Even if his body couldn't do everything, his mind stayed sharp. One afternoon, Emily invited her younger cousins over to meet Rex. They were curious, excited, but also slightly scared of a big dog. Rex, sensing the gentle energy, lowered himself carefully to the floor, letting the children approach slowly. Emily guided them, teaching them how to pet him and respect his space. By the end of the visit, Rex lay calmly on the floor, the children giggling as they stroked him, and Emily felt a deep sense of pride. Her dog, once feared to be too old or sick, now inspired joy in others. It wasn't always easy. Some days Rex struggled with pain, refusing to eat or moving slowly despite her encouragement. Emily would sit by his side, holding his paw, whispering words of comfort. She cried with him sometimes, feeling helpless but never giving up. Those moments made the small victories even sweeter. When Rex finally took a full meal, or walked a little farther, Emily celebrated quietly, hugging him and telling him he was amazing. Emily's friends and neighbors often asked why she was so devoted to an old dog, especially when younger, healthier animals could have been adopted more easily. Emily would simply smile and say, "Rex deserves a second chance. He saved lives when no one asked him to. I want to give him his happy ending." Slowly, the town began to take notice of Rex's transformation. People who had once assumed he was too old and sick to survive were now surprised by his presence on walks, his calm demeanor, and the visible trust between him and Emily. They marveled at the love and dedication a young girl could show to a dog many had already given up on. By the end of a few months, Rex's health stabilized. He was not the energetic canine he once had been, but he could walk without pain for short distances, play lightly with toys, and most importantly, enjoy his days with Emily. His tail wagged more frequently, and his eyes, once dull with illness, now sparkled with trust and contentment. Emily often reflected on what she had learned from Rex. Caring for him required patience, understanding, and sacrifice. She had to put aside her own comfort, stay organized, and research constantly, but she also gained more than she had imagined: companionship, love, and the satisfaction of seeing a life she saved grow stronger each day. At night, as Emily lay in bed, Rex curled beside her. She would whisper stories to him, stories of the missions he had completed, of the lives he had saved, and of how special he was. She wanted him to know that his life had meaning, that his past bravery was honored, and that his present life was filled with love. Rex's breathing was slower, steadier, and his body relaxed. He had found safety, care, and a person who would never abandon him. And in return, Emily had found a friend, a teacher, and a loyal companion who showed her what true courage and resilience looked like. In those quiet moments, Emily realized something important. Sometimes healing doesn't come from medicine alone. Healing comes from love, attention, and the patience to help someone, or in this case a dog, feel valued again. And through this journey, both Emily and Rex discovered that second chances were possible, even when the world had already turned away. By the time spring had fully arrived, the world around Emily's home had begun to bloom with color. Flowers peeked through the soil, trees stretched their green branches toward the sky, and the sun warmed the streets. Inside the house, a different kind of transformation had taken place. Rex, the dog who had once been weak, sick, and scheduled for euthanasia, was now stable, calm, and slowly reclaiming the life he deserved. Emily walked alongside him in the yard, her hand lightly resting on his back. He walked steadily now, his legs no longer trembling as much, and his tail wagged gently whenever she spoke to him. He wasn't young, he wasn't fast like he had been in his K9 days, but he was alive, safe, and happy, and that was more than enough. Emily often reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She remembered the first time she saw him at the shelter, lying quietly, tired, and almost defeated. Most people had walked past without noticing, but she had seen something they hadn't: the spark of loyalty, bravery, and love still glowing in his eyes. She had promised herself then that she would never let him feel forgotten. Rex had rewarded her faith in ways she hadn't imagined. Beyond the slow recovery of his body, he had brought warmth and joy to her home. His gentle presence had taught Emily lessons she couldn't have learned from books alone, lessons about patience, dedication, and compassion. Each day they spent together strengthened the bond between them, a bond that seemed unbreakable. The story of Emily and Rex had begun to spread quietly through the town. Neighbors would stop to watch them on their daily walks, commenting on how healthy Rex looked and how closely he seemed to trust the young girl by his side. The police officers who had once worked with Rex heard the tale and were deeply moved. Some even came by to visit, marveling at how much care and love Emily had given him. One officer, Daniels, who had been Rex's first handler, approached Emily one afternoon as she tended to Rex in the yard. He knelt beside the dog, gently rubbing his neck, and smiled. "I can't believe it," he said softly. "He looks peaceful. He looks happy." Emily smiled back, feeling a lump in her throat. "He's happier than I've ever seen him," she said. "He's safe and he knows he's loved." Daniels nodded. You gave him a second chance. Most people would have walked away. You didn't. That's incredible. Emily blushed at the praise, but deep down she knew she had only done what her heart told her. She had not set out to become a hero. She had only wanted to save a life. And in doing so, she had saved herself from the shallow comforts of everyday life, learning the true meaning of responsibility and love. As the weeks passed, Rex's routines became comfortable and predictable. Mornings began with short walks around the yard, followed by meals prepared carefully to match his diet. Afternoons were spent resting, often with Emily reading nearby, her hand occasionally resting on his fur. Evenings were quiet, filled with gentle pats, soft whispers, and the occasional playful gesture when Rex found a toy he could handle. Rex's improvement, however, was not just physical. It was emotional. The fear and sadness that had once shadowed his eyes were gone, replaced by trust and contentment. He would wag his tail when Emily approached, nuzzle her hand, and sometimes even give a soft bark to show excitement. These small gestures brought Emily immense joy. Each movement, each glance, each expression of trust reminded her that she had made the right choice. Then came the day the police department heard of what Emily had done. A small ceremony was arranged at the station to honor Rex for his years of service. Officers old and new gathered in a quiet room, and even though Rex was older and slower now, he walked beside Emily proudly. Medals and certificates were handed to the girl, acknowledging the dog's contributions. Some officers teared up, remembering the missions and rescues Rex had accomplished. Emily stood beside Rex, her hand on his back, and whispered softly, "See, boy, everyone remembers you. You're a hero." Rex responded with a soft bark, leaning against her. Though he could no longer perform the feats of his youth, his presence commanded respect. He was no longer a forgotten dog, no longer scheduled to die quietly in a shelter. He had a place, a purpose, and a family who loved him unconditionally. After the ceremony, as Emily walked Rex home, she reflected on how life could change in a single moment. Just days ago, Rex had been on the brink of death, forgotten and left to suffer. But a single act of courage and compassion had changed everything. Emily's choice to adopt him, to care for him with patience and love, had not only saved his life but had transformed her own understanding of responsibility, kindness, and courage. Back at home, Emily set Rex's bed by the window so he could watch the sun set. He rested his head on the soft blanket, looking out at the garden and the world beyond. Emily knelt beside him, gently rubbing his ears and whispering stories. Stories of the missions he had completed, the lives he had saved, and the bravery he had shown. She wanted him to know that his past was honored, that his sacrifices were remembered, and that his present life was cherished. Night fell, and the house grew quiet. Emily turned off the lights, leaving a soft nightlight glowing in the corner. Rex curled up beside her bed, his breathing steady, his body relaxed. Emily placed a hand on his side, feeling the slow rise and fall of his chest, and whispered, "You're safe, Rex. You're loved. You'll never be alone again." In the days that followed, Emily continued to care for him with the same dedication and love she had shown from the beginning. She learned that even small moments, like a wag of his tail, a soft nuzzle, or a quiet sigh, could be powerful signs of trust and happiness. She celebrated each victory, no matter how small, and in return, Rex rewarded her with unwavering loyalty and affection. Over time, Emily also noticed the effect Rex had on others. Friends and neighbors who met him admired his calm demeanor and the trust he displayed. Children learned to approach him gently, watching how he responded to kindness. Even adults found themselves inspired by the bond between a young girl and an old dog, understanding that love and dedication could heal wounds that medicine alone could not touch. One evening, as Emily sat on the porch with Rex by her side, watching the stars appear in the sky, she reflected on the journey they had taken together. She realized that sometimes life gave second chances in unexpected ways. A hero like Rex deserved dignity, love, and care until his final days, and she had been given the privilege to provide it. Rex, sensing her thoughts, rested his head on her lap, closing his eyes. Emily stroked his fur gently, feeling the warmth of his body, and whispered, "You've done so much for others, Rex. Now it's our turn to take care of you." In that quiet moment, It was clear that both had found something rare and extraordinary. Emily had given Rex life, love, and purpose once more. In return, Rex had given Emily lessons in courage, empathy, and dedication, lessons that would stay with her forever. The story of the sick canine dog who had been scheduled for euthanasia ended not with sadness, but with hope, love, and the powerful reminder that even when the world gives up on someone, a single act of compassion can change everything. Rex's life had been saved, and Emily had become a hero in her own way, not through medals or recognition, but through the love and courage she showed to a dog who deserved to live. And as they sat together under the soft glow of the night sky, both knew that the bond they shared would never be broken. A dog once forgotten had found a family, and a young girl had learned that the smallest acts of kindness could create miracles.